good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you wherever and whenever you're joining us. Welcome to a special edition of What Caught My Eye, or WCME Sports. This edition we're using to preview the upcoming NFL season in 2024, and we are joined by our resident gambling expert, the Degen Gambler, Mr. AJ Pittis. And he's here to help kind of break down some stuff for us, give us some good lead pipe lock type picks and things that he's looking for not just this season, but also a little bit of week one stuff, because we know that's a pretty heavy betting session when it comes to this year. But before we get into it, as always, follow us on our social media at WCME_sports. That's on X and on Instagram. We're also on Facebook. Our episodes for our regular show and our special editions, they drop every Wednesday at noon on Spotify and on YouTube. I'm the coach, Nick Vesci. We got the man, Stephen Comlow.
Yo.
The boy, Stephen Vesci, is still, if you were listening to us before, he's at home with his newborn daughter, Stella, and his wife, Kayla, who are both doing well. Stella was born a couple days ago, so he's not with us. But like I said, we have our resident gambling expert, the great Degen Gambler AJ Pittis is here, and he was nice enough to join us on our full episode before, but now we're in his wheelhouse. We are in AJ's. This is it for him. This is what gets him going. So AJ, we're gonna start off with some year-long player props that you had your eye on for this year. So what are some things that you were looking at this year that this is what I gotta get on?
Yeah. So for me, I kind of broke these out by a couple different sections, but I'll start with passing yards and QBs. That's where kind of the game starts and where the game ends for most teams, right? It's all about QB play. When you're thinking through player props, one thing you got to always remember is they probably always seem a little low. And the big reason for that is there's always that risk of injury. We always go into the year thinking there's 32 QBs, and there's no way this guy's going to be lower than this total because he was higher than that last year. But you just never kind of really know what's going to happen. So always be wary of that when you're picking player props, which does bring me to my first player for passing yards as an under. And this might surprise some people, but again, what I just mentioned with injury, it's Lamar Jackson under 3,300 passing yards for the season. There's a couple of reasons why I really like this one. One, he's only done this one time in his entire career. It's not something he's done perennially. He's been a starter for a while. And the big thing with Lamar, which you always got to be wary of, is he doesn't usually play a full season. And you never know when he's going to take a hit or not slide in time or whatever it may be. And he's not a guy who has a high passing volume per game. His average for his career passing is right over 200 yards a game, and that really barely gets him there if he plays a full season, which he really has never done. And last year he played 16 games. He had 3,400 yards passing. I think this year, with the addition of Derrick Henry, you finally have a stable running back for the first time in a couple of years. I think if everyone remembers, they've had a ton of injuries in their backfield. With the addition of him, with the fact that
a ton is an understatement.
Yeah,
they have. What's amazing about the Ravens, they keep they set themselves up where everyone who comes in produces, but man, it just one producer after the other goes down.
Yeah.
So hopefully Henry stays healthy. But you talk about injury risk. That's a guy who you wouldn't be shocked that he doesn't get half the games this year because of the pounding he took in Tennessee. Like, running backs just don't, even as strong as he is, it would almost be an anomaly if he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, and the one thing about Derrick Henry is he is kind of the anomaly, right? There's never really been a running back that big has taken this many carries, who runs as fast as he does. He's the one actually giving the hits more than he's actually taking them, which is the biggest difference, I think, for him. And, Derrick Henry for yards is not on my list today. I feel like his line's appropriate because of the injury risk, because of the age, the time in the league. But I think just with having a consistent running back and the fact that Lamar could get hurt pretty much in any game, I like the under for passing yards, just from a guy who, if he misses 2 games, it might not hit this mark and have a great year. Yeah. So
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
as much as I do like Lamar, I think he needs to improve his passing accuracy, especially in playoff time. And as much as I do like Derrick Henry, I I love him. I do not want him to get hurt. I want him to outproduce his number. You're right. It just, when you think through it, it's like, man, do I want to take the risk on this when I probably have other better bets around, like you're probably going to highlight here for us?
Yeah. Yeah, so the next player I have on my list here, and I'll actually combine both passing yards and passing touchdowns for the year, both separate bets, is going to be the great Joe Burrow, who's coming back off an injury from last year, kind of a fluke thing with his elbow. His over for passing yards is 4,500 yards, and then his over for touchdowns is 27.5. So looking to see if he can bounce back this year, have that big 4,000 plus yard season, and have that big 30 plus touchdown year. And just to kind of highlight where Joe Burrow typically is when he plays is his 2 full seasons. He was at 44 and 4,600 passing yards, so he was well above that mark. He's a guy, again, he's efficient enough where if he misses a couple games, he could still hit this mark, which is why I really am excited for him. Also for his passing touchdowns, those 2 seasons I just mentioned is really his 2 full seasons. He threw for 34 and 34 touchdowns. So if he has a bounce back year, he plays most of the games, he should hit these marks. And also one of those years is a 16 game season. Actually both those years were 16 game seasons, not even 17. So add another game on top of that. As a healthy player, he should hit these fairly easily. One caveat, because this, again, I prepared some material here. What was that, Gabo?
What if Jamar Chase doesn't?
Jumping right into that. During our recording a second ago, got the text saying Jamar Chase might be holding out for week 1 now, which would definitely be a hit to this number. And if the betting books drop this anymore, I would still take it. I think Jamar Chase is back, honestly, in week 1. I think they just pay him and they move on from this because they're going to have to. But I really like both these bets for the Bengals to really have a big bounce back year. If I wasn't so high in the Ravens, I would say this is probably, in my opinion, the 3rd or 4th best team in the AFC behind the Ravens and Chiefs.
So I actually think that Jamar chasing doesn't have as much of an effect on Joe Burrow's overall numbers. Because Joe Burrow, I don't think, is someone who's sitting there saying, I got to get the ball to this guy. I don't think he even notices who he's throwing to. Yeah. He's reading what is there. He's thrown to the open area and the open guy. And that's why he was successful at LSU when he had all those receiving weapons, which one of them was Jamar Chase. Yep. And I think that's one of the reasons he's been successful at the next level is he's not, zeroing in. He's going through his reads, and whatever the best play is, he does it. So I think he's one of the few guys in the league where you could throw out 5 random dudes out there. I mean, hell, what was it? Trenton Irwin put up some big games down the stretch last year or the year before.
Tyler Boyd, there's always
Tyler Boyd is awesome. He was awesome at Pitt. He's
a very underrated player. Very underrated player.
I am a fan of Tyler Boyd, but you're right. He doesn't stick out. He's not like some big giant target. He's not Plaxico Burress running down there he ain't Randy.
We still got T. Higgins too.
Higgins was phenomenal, right? He's got enough weapons.
Yeah.
So I don't, as great as Jamar Chase is, I think that's a non-issue, a non-starter in terms of that bet.
And even with checkdowns to Zach Moss or Chase Brown, they're going to get yards.
It's going to come down to his O-line. That's been the liability in Joe Burrow's career, and he's still able to
Cincinnati forever.
Yeah, it's just that. Even in their efforts to try and build a moat around Joe Burrow, it's still proven ineffective. But I think that's the big determining factor. I agree with you, Nick, is that regardless of whether Chase is there or not, he still has weapons. Joe Burrow's talented enough he could make it rain out there, baby. He was all state. But he, it's going to come down to O-line.
Yeah. And again, even in some of those early years, he still does this. It's just what he does. He's going to throw for yards. It's more, if he can stay healthy, and your point O-line, if he can stay healthy, I think this is a lock.
It's a good pick.
So third, what was it?
I like it.
Yep. So third passing prop I have for a QB, and the last one I have on the list is going to be for Jared Goff over 4,025.5 passing yards. This is another QB again, coming back to the same system, same team, same offense. They even get Jamison Williamson back, who might be a big weapon over the top. And again, this is a guy who's been very consistent. He's generally stayed healthy. And in his career, he's done this and hit this point 4 separate times. And again, all 3 of those were in 16-game seasons, not 17. And if he had actually just played one more game in some of those 2 other seasons, he would have made this mark pretty easily. Again, it's, most of these come down to health, but 4,025 and a half passing yards of the over-under. And last year he had 4,600 is what he had last year. So
did he really?
Yeah, they lit it up in Detroit. They really had a good offense, and it's kind of the same thing. It's like he could still miss 2 games and probably still hit this number. So as long as he can generally stay healthy and on his feet, I think this is another big lock. There's not really concern with me and anything changing on the offense where I wouldn't want to take this pick.
Good pick.
I like it. Our Guatemalan viewership is going to be very happy with that pick, by the way.
I like it.
I like that.
So one more prop bet for our QBs here before we move on to some of the rushing and receiving props I have for the season. And this one might surprise some people, but when I talk through it, I think it'll make some sense. It's Brock Purdy passing touchdowns under 20.5. And you guys might think, well, this is a pretty good offense that just signed Ayuk back. So last season, in a full season, he had 31 passing touchdowns with a touchdown passing rate of around 7%, meaning 7% of his passes ended in a touchdown pass. And again, this offense had a lot of explosive plays, a lot of plays on the field to like Kittle or even screens to McCaffrey. I think he took a couple to the house. But the big thing to note here with this point is the league average is closer to 4.5. It's much, much lower. So even if he takes a small step back, he's looking at having that touchdown number drop below that 28 mark from 31 to maybe 26, 27. You also have both CMC and Debo on the ground as a team that tends to run over people. There's just a lot here where this, even with a full season, I think could go wrong. And there's always the risk of someone getting hurt or missing a couple games, or even in his case, if they've dominated, he might sit out the last game where he's sitting at 28, he doesn't get that last one. But I think for Brock Purdy, and this is kind of a big thing for the fantasy football players as well, is if his efficiency drops down even to above average, but not this excellent number you've seen, it's going to be tough for him to fully get that 29 or late 30 plus touchdown season again.
Okay. Yeah, and I think one thing that is noteworthy, Ayuk, but also Trent Williams, and they both held out for contracts. Mm-hmm. And historically in the NFL, and really any other sport, holding out does not yield results. It yields your a higher paycheck for you, but not better production for you and not better production for your team. So, I could fully see and would not be shocked if the 49ers regress a lot this year because of that. And that's a shame because, I felt like the last couple years they have been the best team. They've been the best team in all 3 phases of the game, not just offense, defense, special teams, but line, second level, third level. Yeah, right? They've been the best at all throughout. They're so complete, but it's hard to quantify the effect of that, right? It's not a video game where I can plug Trent Williams in at like a overall 96 and he plays like that in the simulation on the game. Yeah. It doesn't work like that, right? It doesn't work like Brandon Ayuk throwing him out there and saying, oh, his catch rating is 97, so he's going to catch it. It doesn't work like that. So I think that's a good pick because I could see a ton of regression. I could see them playing a lot closer games this year and lower scoring games this year because of that, relying more, like you said, on McCaffrey and Debo to handle more loads and carry the ball more and get some of those short yardage plays because there's too many other stuff going on. There's too many unpredictable factors because of that. Like it just doesn't. It's not a video game, and so that's why I like that. I like that pick.
Yeah, no, I think that's one again where you look at it and you go, even without injury, there's an outcome, but he doesn't get this number. I think that's the big thing when you look at his total with that one stat. Mm-hmm. All right. So moving on now to some rushing yard over-unders I have for the season. I got some interesting ones here, and as I kind of looked at it, it made some sense. And but it's there's one I really was kind of sad to put on here because I had him last year in fantasy. But So the first guy I got
how'd that work out for you?
Yeah, it didn't work out very well. That's why he's on the under list for this one, by the way.
There's the result of his fantasy play, by the way, for those of you watching on YouTube. AJ had to do an entire art gallery at the local bar, Gus's, in Richmond. And Kamlo here won I believe there's a watercolor painting of Joe Biden.
There's a watercolor painting of Joe Biden. It was one of the 12 pieces of art I put together along.
That is original.
Yep.
So. Yeah. Caveat there for those of you listening at home and watching.
Yeah, it was not a good year, but he's I'll jump to him first, and it actually is not the first guy on the list, but it's Kenneth Walker under rushing yards at 900.5 rushing yards. He was maybe the best player on my team, and that's summing up how bad the team was. So the big reason I have him under is this offense is going to be changing. I also don't believe this team's going to be very good. Their win total is not very good. Their defense is okay at best. And then with the offense changing, I think with those three receivers, they're going to want to throw the ball a lot more. I also believe his role in the passing game might expand a little bit. And at the end of the day, too, you also have Zach Charbonnet there, and with a new offensive coordinator and a new team at the helm, it'd be interesting to see how they use all those players. And at the same point, too, last year, he's had some injury issues. He only played in 15 games last year, which isn't bad. In the end of the season with only 905 yards rushing, he kind of had a hot start to the year and a really kind of slow end of the year. But I just think this is a guy that there's a really strong possibility he just does not get to that number, even if he plays all 17 games, which is just kind of unlikely for most running backs. It's just hard for them to survive that. So he misses 3-4 games. This just feels like he's not going to get to 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, is it Seahawks, right?
He plays running back for the Seahawks, and I think that team's gonna be bad, and it's gonna be a lot more passing than it was with Pete Carroll, who likes to kind of have a bell cow running back. So it's a change at the helm. Next player on the list, who's coming back to, I think, a much better offensive situation this year, and he still did well last year, is James Conner over rushing yards at 725.5 yards.
I love it. He's still in Arizona, right?
He's still in Arizona. So
love this pick.
Yeah, he's done this even with, again, he's a guy who's always on that injury watch list, right? He's never played a full season. He never has. He's played 13 games the last 3 years, and he's hit this mark in all 3 years. He just finds a way to get over that. What was Kamlo? 7.
What was the yardage again?
Yeah, 725.5. Everything kind of ends with that 0.5, but
yeah, no, I got that part.
He's hit this 3 years in a row. They did bring in Trey Benson. I just don't see him taking a heavy workload. And James Conner, people forget, had 1,000 yards rushing in 13 games last year, mostly playing with a backup QB and a bad offense. I think it was the Josh Dobbs offense there for the first 5 weeks before he got traded. I think with Kyler Murray back,
3 or 4 different QBs, right? Down
in
in
Arizona. It was, I think, it was 2 before Kyler came back, but Kyler came back very late. And
yes,
but I think this is a guy that, again, he can get there with the injuries and with the missed games. He should be the guy in the field the first 5 or 6 weeks. You'll probably feel really good about this one going into week 6 or 7, and then you'll get hurt, and then he'll bounce back in the last 4 or 5 games and get you over the hump with it.
I'm a fan of his. Like you want to root for people. Like, lest we forget, this dude beat cancer before, right? So this is a guy who the easiest hardship he's had to overcome is breaking a tackle or trying to fend off a linebacker because his lineman missed a block, right? His perspective on life has been phenomenal. His output on the field in a lot of ways, in the way he plays, matches like that kind of mindset. I loved him at Pitt. Just several Pitt references. Who thought we'd have that today with Tyler Boyd? Loved him at Pitt. Loved him when he was on the Steelers. I thought that was a massive mistake by the Steelers to let him go. Yeah. He embodied that city. The city embraced him. And for kind of like the transition Pittsburgh has been going through since the Roethlisberger era ended, God, that didn't sit well with me. He seemed like a dude you want to hold on. He's the kind of dude that it does not matter. He's going to produce. He's never in a typical Pitt fashion. Like every prospect guy that comes out of Pitt, your Fitzgeralds, your Aaron Donalds, none of them are the biggest person. They're not the strongest person, not the fastest person. But man, do they produce? I mean, your boy Ditka. There's another one, right? That Pitt mindset that comes from there. When you are able to do that is different, and he fit that mold. He still fits that mold, in my opinion. I love this pick, and great. We're gonna mark it here, and Comlo down the road is gonna play it and make us look like a bunch of schmucks when this doesn't hit. But I am a fan of this pick, AJ.
All right. No, I am too, and I think he gets there pretty easily, and I think we'll be liking that bet mid-season here. I have a quick one more for running back. It's more of a caveat because it's still open on one book, and I thought this was really interesting. Jonathan Brooks, the running back in Carolina, under 800.5 rushing yards. He is hurt. He's on a bad offense, and he's splitting time with Chuba Hubbard right now. This should be a closed bet or be much, much lower. It was still open on one book as of yesterday on BetMGM. If you can snag that, I would just snag that one before they all close them, because this really shouldn't even be the line anymore. This should have moved. I was kind of surprised it was even still open, and it might not be by the time this recording.
That's very interesting. So I didn't realize they will close a bet. They'll say you can't bet on this anymore.
Once they if something drastically changed and he just got, I believe it was IR, he's missing the first 4 weeks now automatically. They can lock a bet up and say we're not going to take any more bets on this one. So if you got it before, you're good, but after it changes.
Wow, that's crazy. You have any more season player props for us before we get into some week one? Do you have any?
Yeah, I got a couple. I'll go kind of quick for these next couple, but DJ Moore and Davante Adams, I have both of the receiving yards overs. DJ Moore is a 975. He's not even 1,000. He's the number one in that offense. He does this with bad quarterback play almost every year. Davante Adams, he hasn't been under this total, I think, since he missed 8 games in 2017 or 18. And again, he did this the last 2 years of bad QB play. Gardner Minshew is good enough to keep the totals up and keep the targets up. Has
Minshew been named the starter for Vegas?
Yeah, Minshew's going to be the starter out there for now. It's not going to be a good offense, but he gets so many targets and so much attention. He's just going to end up getting this number. And last year, the QB play for him was so atrocious. I think he caught less than 60% of his passes. I think almost all the ones he missed were uncatchable. So you give him some actual catchable balls, he's going to even be better than he was last year. One more receiver. Actually, we have one more receiver under. I actually have Quentin Johnson under 600.5 yards receiving. Just take the under. The guy is not going to even be on the field. He didn't even start 7 games last year. He's going to be a bust. And he's not now maybe even the third option on a team that's not going to pass the ball.
Who is Quentin Johnson?
He was a receiver out of TCU last year. He has, I think, the worst or second worst rookie receiving performance by a first-round pick ever.
Who does he even play for?
He plays for the Chargers.
The Chargers?
Yeah, he's on the Chargers team. He's going to be the third receiver, maybe. It's not looking good.
Wow, that's wild. Do you have any props for like a Wes Welker, Danny Amendola? Any props for them? No?
I don't have one of those.
Do they not still play anymore? I'm just confused.
Yeah. The last one I have, by the way, is just I have Kyle Pitts over receiving yards at 750.5.
I feel like that's popular. I've seen a lot of hype on Kyle Pitts coming into this season.
Yeah, here's the big thing, and people don't realize this, is we're all really loving Sam Laporta, Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid. Sam Laporta is only 3 months younger than Kyle Pitts, and Trey McBride and Dalton Kincaid are both a year older. He's super young. He's coming into his prime the next couple of years. It's going to work out this year.
You think so?
I think this is the year you put it together.
He's got Kirk D. Cousins throwing him the ball, and I like this because if something happens to Kirk, you would assume Penix steps in, and everyone knows a young quarterback's best friend is his tight end.
Yeah. And he had 1,000 yards as a 21-year-old rookie in the league as a tight end, which was unheard of for tight ends. They typically take 3 years to kind of really develop. So this just feels like this is the year it all comes together. And I think we all love the new shiny toys of Kincaid and Laporta, but they're all the same age. They're going to be in the league for a while, these guys.
I like it. But before we get into your week 1 picks, just a quick reminder for those of you out there: if you are going to gamble, please make sure you do it responsibly. Right? If you feel like you need some help, reach out to help somewhere. If you feel like it's become that type of an issue, and make sure you are gambling legally in states where it is legally allowed. We are recording in the state of Virginia. These things are all allowed in the state of Virginia. We're recording, but keep that in mind if you are listening elsewhere, to make sure that you are being responsible, being legal. Right? These are not 100% lock picks. These are just projections that our expert is going over. So make sure you keep those things in mind as well as you go through it. So AJ, so that was your player props for the season.
Yes.
Do you have any team props, like over unders, like team win wise?
Yeah, and I'll go through them kind of quick. I do have a couple I really like, and one that
I always like these. I played this one a little bit. I like this a little more than the player ones because, like you said, with the injury stuff, I think that is like a downer, right? You're almost like, how do I factor in injury? Whereas when you factor in the team, it's like, okay, the whole team has to take this thing into account. What do I think of this team? So I kind of like those a little better.
Yeah. So I have 5 win totals, and I'll run through them quickly, and you guys can chime in which ones you like, which ones you don't like.
AJ, take your time. You're good.
So for win totals, the one I like the most right now is the Baltimore Ravens over 10.5 wins.
Really?
They're my pick, I think, to get over the hump this year and get to the AFC, or win the AFC Championship game and get to the Super Bowl. That would be my other pick. I think they're going to end up being the best team. I think at some point Kansas City just can't maintain what they're doing, and I think the Ravens are really all in getting Derrick Henry and building that defense up. They're going to be a really tough out against anyone.
So I actually think they're in for some regression because of the accuracy of Lamar Jackson. That to me is the biggest issue, is you can make them one-dimensional and force him to throw the ball. You can have success. And I think I love him. He's electric to watch. He was electric in college. He's been electric in the pros. But I think there are some fatal flaws in his throwing. And I think that's the thing that you have to win.
Yeah.
Right? To win, right? If you look at all the quarterbacks, like hell, even Joe freaking Flacco from the University of Delaware fighting Bidens, he, in that playoff run when they won the championship, was so accurate, was so precise. I need to see that from Lamar. We've seen everything. He has thrown us the kitchen sink. He has shown us that he can do anything that any other human's ever been able to do on a football field. I need to see the accuracy, and I think they're in for some regression, in my opinion. I think, I like him. I love Harbaugh as a coach. I love the culture that is the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah. I think the way they play, Nick, the good news with the over I have on the total, and maybe we can argue the getting over the hump, but with the total itself, they're not a team that's going to typically lose to bad teams because of the way they play, and they're just so solid on defense and with their rushing game on offense. I think they're going to get there. I feel like this is their year to really go out there, get the 1 or 2 seed, and kind of get over the hump.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. Who else you got?
The next prop I have for win total for the season is New Orleans Saints under 7.5 at even money. I just don't think this team is very good. I think, it is not a super low total, and they play in a potentially the worst division in football this year. If you look at the teams to start the year, I just don't see this team getting any better. They seem to be getting worse. They have a ton of salary cap issues. Their players like Alvin Kamara are a year older, Derek Carr's a year older, and now kind of old. I mean, if he hasn't been very good in the last couple of years, if he gets any worse, this team is going to have trouble moving the ball, and any step back on defense, and they're just going to be in a world of hurt all year.
Same. Agreed. Yeah. I took that under as well.
Yeah. One more I have, and this might not be the most popular one, and I will say when I first put this on the list, it had a little bit less, juice to it, is I actually have the Pittsburgh Steelers under 8.5 wins at a minus 150, meaning you would have to bet $150 to win 100. I think this is the year. There's just too much inconsistency at QB. I don't think Russell Wilson fixes it. I also think they're the worst team in this division, and I just don't see them winning more than 2 divisional games, and I just think they finally just go 8-9 and don't get over that hump. And the line is moving with the under, by the way. The money and the people are betting on the under, or I should say, the money is betting on the under because the line is moving down.
Yeah. So there's a lot that you point out there that is logical, right? It makes sense when you look at it on a piece of paper. But Mike Tomlin and the Steelers organization has shown throughout like their history that piece of paper it ain't worth a damn. And I would have a really hard time betting against them. Betting against Russell Wilson too. He is been the underdog his entire life, man. I mean, just trace his career back. He wanted to play at UVA. He's a Richmond guy. He's from Richmond, went to collegiate. He wanted to play at UVA. UVA said, "You're too small. We don't like you. We'll take the higher recruit from Roanoke who didn't start a game." He goes to NC State instead. Outperforms there, sets records at NC State. NC State says, "We don't want you to play baseball anymore." He goes to Wisconsin. That's the best Wisconsin team maybe ever that he led to the Rose Bowl, and it was because of him. Then gets drafted 3rd round, beats out Matt Flynn, I believe.
Matt Flynn
is
from
who
the Packers.
Yes, in Seattle. After Matt Flynn signed a huge contract when he had like a 6-touchdown game and a mop-up Week 17 game.
Mm-hmm.
Beats him out. I believe Russell has somewhere between 7 and 9 Pro Bowls. He has a championship. He's the type of person I just have such a hard time ever betting against. I don't know, maybe just
last year you won a lot of money. If you did it last year, you won a ton of money.
Yes,
that offense was bad in Denver with Sean Payton as a coach.
It was a mess there in Denver.
Yeah.
But man, I just Russ, I have to take him. I have to take him and Mike Tomlin. They've given me no reason to ever doubt them because they just win. They find ways to win. The statistics, the percent chances of this don't matter with them.
It doesn't matter till it matters, and this is my pick for the year. And I mean, again, it's just there's just too much going on there where they got to figure out how to get right on offense, and I just don't know if they get there. And I don't think Russ is the answer. But if there's a situation where he can improve and get better and get back to his form, it probably is with a solid, stable organization like Pittsburgh. They've had only 3 coaches their entire career. It's just been stable. And that's why they keep winning games, keep having winning seasons.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yep.
So let's get to your Week 1 picks real quickly. Who you got in Week 1?
Yep. So I have 7 picks for Week 1. The first pick I have is the Eagles at home -2.5 versus the Packers.
It's at home. They're in Brazil.
Yep. I still got them though. I still got them either way. We'll call it technically the home game, even though no one can wear green in the game apparently.
Yes.
Yep.
I learned that today that the Eagles is probably going to be the Eagles black jerseys and the Packers white jerseys because I don't know how else they could not wear green because it's like bad luck or like there's like a weird thing in Brazil about wearing green. That's why the soccer teams always wear yellow and blue shorts.
Yeah, so I got them at home. I think they're just a more talented team. I think Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, the new offensive coordinator for the Eagles, comes in, and I think they figure out what's going on in offense and get those guys like AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley the ball, and I think they outscore the Packers. I didn't put it as a pick, but I think the over is what hits, but probably depends on we'll see how the offenses look for the Packers, but I think the Eagles are going to score a lot of points in this game.
I love it.
The second pick I have, and this one, I have one word that probably describes how this game is going to end up going. I have Miami at home -3 versus Jacksonville, and the one word is speed. Miami is just the fastest team at their wide receiver 1, 2, and maybe even running back 1 and 2 now. They're just going to be able to scheme these guys open. I think they kind of figure out some of those things that went wrong at the end of last year, and they really come out hot. I'm kind of down on Jacksonville. I think they're a team that struggles most this year. They didn't really show me anything last year that makes me feel good about this team. So I just think that speed kills, and Miami at home just takes this W pretty handily.
I'm really intrigued by that matchup. I like Jacksonville. I think this is one of the better matchups of Week 1, to be honest. I think there's a lot of skill that's going to be on that field. Two teams from Florida, used to playing in the Florida heat and all that crap that goes with it. Very, very intrigued by this game. I think it's going to be very cool TV to watch.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
It could be. I think offensively Miami's just better, and that's the kind of difference in the game. For my next pick, I do have one home dog for the week. It's the home Giant. I have the Giants at home money line plus 110 versus Minnesota. And the reason for this at the end of the day is I do think Daboll is a decent coach. And I think the Giants have filled some holes in their roster. They do get Daniel Jones back, which while I don't think he's great, I think he's serviceable. But Minnesota's coming in with a new QB after the McCarthy industry and Sam Darnold. I've never seen Darnold play really good football. I think they double Justin Jefferson and they make Darnold try to throw everywhere else, and he's going to be seeing ghost again. And I think it's going to be kind of a sloppy game, but I think the Giants come out at home. It's tough to go on the road, especially when you're not a good team, and get a win. And I don't think either of these teams were great, but I don't think either of these teams were good.
No,
I got the home team.
I think they're both terrible. Man, if JJ McCarthy were playing, I think it's a different story.
Yeah,
and I think you're right. I agree. The Giants, I don't have any faith in them. I think they super overachieved in Daboll's first year. Last year, I think they showed their true colors. Again, I don't see them making that much of a stride. They're going to have to super overachieve again if we want to see that.
The bet here, honestly, is you have two bad teams. I'm picking the home team, and I'm picking the team that doesn't have a backup QB in.
Yep. Well, so, I mean, hell, you could argue Daniel Jones is the equivalent to a backup QB.
You could argue that. Probably will be arguing that next year. But my next pick on the list,
when he backs up like the Houston C.J. Stroud in Houston, the Giants, let him go or something.
Yeah. My next pick, and while I still think they don't quite win this game, I think the Rams plus 3.5 on the road at Detroit is another good pick. I will say there's some interesting line movement with this game where the public is on Detroit because Detroit had such a good season last year, but the line is actually moving against them and moving with the Rams. And I will say getting a 3.5-point line, a lot of games end in a field goal or by 3 points, and they don't, again, have to win this. They just have to cover. I think it's a really close and good game, and I think the Rams cover the 3.5 with a good chance they still lose.
Love it.
Yep.
I think that's a Sunday night game, I believe.
It is the Sunday night game. Yep.
That's an intriguing matchup, just as a football fan.
Yeah. For the next pick, had to bet at least one thing on the Thursday night game this week with the Chiefs and Ravens. And in classic me fashion, I have the under in the game. Again, similar kind of concept. The lines kind of slid down a little bit. People always like to bet overs. So if the line's ever moving down and the public's on the over, it's usually a good indication where the money is. And I think both teams kind of feel each other out. Both these teams also have great defenses. I think they kind of come to play while the offenses kind of get things rolling into the season. So I have the under in the first game of the year on that Thursday night game, which typically throughout the year, unders on Thursday nights usually the way to go.
Yep, I agree with that.
Yep. And then, second to last pick I have is I got the Bears shirt on. I have the over in the Bears game at 44.5 points. The Bears are playing at home versus the Titans. The Bears have a much better offense this year. Caleb Williams is looking good. They've gotten Keenan Allen. They got DeAndre Swift. They've really improved, including on the line. And the Titans offense, which people don't realize as much, is going to be much more balanced at least than they've had in the past with Derrick Henry. They're not going to be this grinded out, play it slow team. I think they're going to let Will Levis kind of open it up, and I think it's going to end with either a lot of short possessions and less time coming off the clock, or some big plays that could end the points. But it's really a bet kind of on both offenses either being faster or better than last year.
Bears.
Yep. And then Yeah, then the last pick I got is the Indianapolis is playing Houston at home. I have the over in that game at 48.5.
I like that.
I think you got two good offenses and two okay defenses, and I think there's going to be some fireworks with two young QBs kind of showing what they can do in that first game of the year, first divisional game of the year, which I actually think one of these two teams wins the division. I don't think it's Jacksonville.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I actually, I work with some Colts fans, and they're not sold on Anthony Richardson. They think he's a little too raw and green and injury prone. But I kind of like him. I think there's something to him that I like, and I think Houston's going to regress. I think we saw we've talked about this a lot before, like off the show, but how the league adjusts to you. The NFL is so notorious for adjusting to people, and I feel like they're going to adjust to C.J. Stroud, to D'Amico Ryans, to the Texans, and they were a great story last year. I see a lot of regression from them. I see that division. I think those three teams are actually pretty good: Jacksonville, Houston, and Indy. I think there's something there. With that. But I like the over because I could see that turning into a little bit of a shootout. Like we see some 4 touchdown performances from some of these QBs type of thing.
Yep, that's what I'm thinking too. And I don't still have any trust in the Indianapolis defense at the moment. I don't
trust in any of those defenses. I would trust Houston a little more because of their head coach. Because D'Amico Ryans was such a phenomenal linebacker. Yeah, and he has that pedigree and that pull to be able to do it. But I agree.
Yep.
I like it.
But those are the picks for week 1 in the season.
I love it. I love it, AJ.
Can't wait to play here in a year and realize how many we lost. But
that's it. That's the name of the game, right? How many times have we marked a clip and it's
never ages well.
Oh, you look like a jabroni Parker over here with that. Kamlo, anything before we wrap up our special first week NFL betting edition?
Nope, I wrote all of these down, so you better hope they hit.
I love it. I love it. So, again, before we wrap things up here, make sure you are betting responsibly. Make sure you are betting legally, and make sure it's in a state where it is legal. Again, we are recording this in the state of Virginia where this is legal to do so. But, again, we want to thank our resident Degen gambler, AJ Pittis, for joining us tonight. Love it. It's always fun to talk these over-unders. It is a cool, different way to look at the sport and how things go. But for the man, Stephen Kamlo, I am the coach, Nick Vesci. As always, be decent to each other. Have a good one. We will see you next time. Take care, Guatemala.